Hey guys, it's Trey back again with another video. And in the last video, we set up our tokens. So now we are using JWT tokens in our project. So if you haven't been following along, we are setting up a database where we are storing user credentials and that we can use those credentials to log in users. And at this point, we are returning a token that they can use to hit any secured endpoint that is in our API. So now that we actually have a token, we need to write out how we're going to use said token. All right. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to create some other endpoints, because at the moment, all we have is our login endpoint, and we also have our register endpoint. But in order for us to actually use this token, we have to have another endpoint that we can actually secure to make sure that that we can verify the token and do all of that stuff. All right, so let's just create a new file. So I'm going to create this file. It's going to be called endpoints. So I'm going to say touch endpoints.js. All right, so now we have this file here, and we're going to create an just like a hello world endpoint, and then we'll secure it, and then force users to have a valid token in order to use this endpoint. All right, we're going to do exactly what we did in the auth section. We're going to bring in our express package. So we're going to get express, and then we're going to say const endpoints, and then we're going to say express dot router. All right, so that's going to be our router this time. And then we're going to say module.exports, and then we'll say endpoints. All right. And now we're going to go ahead and create our endpoint. This endpoint is just going to be a hello world endpoint, because we really don't care what the endpoint actually does. We're not creating anything specific. We just want to secure the endpoint. All right. So I'm just going to go through and create this. All right. So now we have our hello endpoint. All right. So that's going to be it for this. This is going to be where we keep our secured endpoints. All right. So the next thing we want to do is actually go back to our auth.js, and we want to create a function that we're going to use to actually verify this token that we receive, so that people can't just pass garbage in as a token and actually get access. So we want to actually check this token. So the way we'll do this is we're going to go back to our auth.js file, and at the bottom, right before the module.exports, we're going to create a new function. So we're going to say const authorize. So this is going to be our authorize function, and this is going to be an express middleware function. If you're not familiar with express middleware, then just go ahead, Google it. It'll come out and show you exactly what it is. But basically what this function is going to do is it's going to run before we actually call our endpoints. Okay, so we're going to run this every time that you're trying to hit any of these endpoints. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the function. It's going to have the request, the response, and a next. All right. So once we're inside of here, we need to get the authorization header from the request. So whenever you send a request to our API, you're going to have to provide an authorization header that has that token, this token here that we pass back to you. And that's how we will authorize your request. Okay. So to get the token, we need to get it from the request. So we're going to say const, and then we'll call this auth, and then we'll say request dot headers dot authorization. All right, and that's going to get the authorization header from the request. Okay, now when we get this authorization header, it's going to look kind of funny. Okay, so when it's getting passed in, the authorization header is going to come in like this. So it'll say bearer space, and then it'll be like EJY, and then the EJY is the actual token. I haven't showed you guys what the token looks like, but we will see it in this video later. But just say this is a token. It's a really long string. Okay, and before it's going to have this bearer with a space. Okay, so we don't want that. Okay, we want to get rid of this bearer part and only keep the token itself. Okay, and that's what we're going to verify. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is make sure that this authorization header isn't completely empty. Okay, so let's do check for that. So we'll say if not auth. So if this authorization header is just completely empty, then we don't want to do anything. We just want to say, hey, you're missing a token. You need to pass in a token. Okay. So we're going to say res.status, and then we're going to send a status of 401, which is unauthorized. And then we're going to say .send, and we're going to have a message of missing token, and then we'll have null data. Okay. And then we need to return because we don't want to continue. All right. But if the authorization header is there, then we need to actually verify that the token is legit. All right. So we're going to say const token. And remember, we need to remove this bearer part from the authorization header. So we're going to say auth dot substring. So we're going to get the substring starting at 7 because that's how many we have here. If you start at 0 and count up. All right. And then we're going to end at auth.length. Okay. So we're going to go all the way up to the end. Start at the 7th index, which is right here, and go all the way up to the end. All right. So there we go. Now we have the actual token, and now we need to verify this token. Okay. So the way we're going to do this is by using our JSON web token package. So I'm going to scroll up to the top just to show you what I'm talking about right here. So we're going to use this JSON web token package, and there is a verify method that we can use on there. So we're going to say JWT.verify. Then we need to pass in the token, and then we need to pass in the JWT key, which is also defined at the top. I'll show you that as well right here. If you haven't, if you weren't following the rest of the video. So we have already defined that, and there we go. So this verify is going to check to make sure that the token is verified. And if that is successful, then we'll just go ahead and call the next function, which is express middleware, basically saying, all right, go ahead, we're good, go on to the next. There's an issue with doing it just this way because this verify token, if it's not valid, it's going to throw an error. Okay. So we want to catch that error. We don't want to basically crash the whole server if somebody's token is not verified. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to surround this with a try catch block. That way we can catch any errors that are thrown. Okay. So I'm going to say, put that the verify and the next call inside of this try block, and then we will catch an error. And then we will console.error the error. So that's going to print it out to the screen. And then we also want to send a status of 401, which is unauthorized. And then we will do a send. We're going to have a message of invalid token. And then data will be null. And here we do not have to put a return because this is the end of the function. So it'll return on its own, and we are good to go. This function is complete. Now, the next thing we need to do is actually export this authorize function, because right now it is only can be used in this file. So we're going to go down here to where it says module.exports, and we're going to add in an object here around this. So we're going to return the router, and we're also going to return this authorize function. Okay. So whenever we import, we'll have both of these available. Okay. So now that we have that done, we can go to our server.js and import the stuff we just created. So remember, now that we're returning two things from auth, we're going to actually destructure this object, and we're going to grab these things out. So we're going to say authorize, and then we'll also get the router. Okay. So we're getting exactly what we put here. Okay. So there we go. Pulled them out. And now we also need to import our endpoints file, which has our secured endpoint. Okay, this is the endpoint we want to actually secure. So we're going to pull that in as well. So I'm going to say require, and then we'll do endpoints. All right, and remember to put the / so it knows to check this folder for it. All right, now we have both of those things imported. The next thing we want to do is actually use that stuff in our Express server. So we're going to go down here. We're going to change this from auth to router. Okay, so that's going to still have our login and register functions in it. The next thing we want to do is add our middleware function, which is this authorize function here. So we're going to say app.use, and then we'll just put authorize. Okay, so that's how you add in a middleware function. And then the last thing we want to do is use this endpoints router here. So we're going to say app.use, and then we'll say /secure, and then we'll put in endpoints. Okay. So now basically what's happening here is whenever we send a request to our Express server, it's going to, do this part right here, which basically allows us to use JSON as our request body. Then it's going to try to look for your request in here. If any of your requests match either register or login, because that's the only two endpoints in here, then it will match on here. If it doesn't match, if your request does not match any one of those endpoints, it's going to run this authorize function, which is what we wrote to check to make sure that the token is valid. And if this fails, it's just going to send you back saying invalid token, and it'll stop here. But if your token is valid, then it's going to try to look through here and see if your endpoint is inside of this endpoints here, and then it'll run that. All right, so let's go ahead and test this out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here. I'm going to say node server.js. Make sure everything's saved so that you don't have any issues with that. All right, so now we're going to come down here and we're going to actually get a new token from our auth endpoint. So we're just going to log in pretty much. I did not show you guys this last time and I forgot to. So we're going to go ahead and do it this time so you can actually see what the token looks like. So we're going to say curl -x post, and then we'll do -d, and this is where we want to pass in the username and password. So we're going to say username, and the username is John Doe, and then we'll do password, and the password is password. Please use better passwords for your application. All right, the next up is the header, and we want to pass in that we are passing in some JSON as the body. So we're going to say content type application /JSON. And the one thing I completely forgot was the actual endpoint. So we're going to say, go back to run up here, HTTP localhost. It'll be 3000/login. Hit enter. And now we see that we have a response, login successful. And then the data is our actual token. So I'm going to pull this token. All right. And now we can use this token to access our secured endpoint. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to try to access this hello endpoint without passing in our token. Okay. So we can see what happens. So we're going to say curl HTTP localhost 3000/secure/hello. All right, and as we can see, it says that there's a token missing. All right, so that is correct. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to pass in a token, but it's going to be invalid, just to make sure that our second catch is going to work. So we're going to do we're going to pass in a header. This header is going to be called authorization. All right. And then let's just pass in invalid token. All right, we hit enter, and now we see that we got a response that says invalid token. So missing token, invalid token, both of these are working as expected. Now let's actually pass in a legit token. So we're gonna do authorization. We're gonna say bearer, and then we're gonna pass in our token. Hit enter, and now we see that it says message success. And we have our response, which is hello world. So as you can see, we have now used the token to access our secured endpoints. So let's do one more. I'm just going to erase one of these values from the token. We hit enter. Once again, we get invalid token. So as you can see, you have to have an exact valid token in order to access any of these secured endpoints. All right. So that's pretty much it for this one. I think we are done with this series. I don't think there's really anything else for me to show you. You have stored user credentials. You have retrieved the user credentials. You're using them with JSON web tokens. Use the Argon 2 algorithm to hash your passwords. I think, this is for introductory little series. I think this is pretty much it. Once again, I'm going to let you guys know I am not at all into the whole cryptography and security scene. This is really just for educational purposes for you to understand, kind of how things work. If you really want to understand this, I suggest you actually go and, do some studying of this subject and figure out what is the actual best practices for this, for, basically security and storing these credentials. My best, my best bet for you guys is to actually just use someone who already, does this for you, like Google or Auth0 or, anything that you can use that will outsource this from you. That way you're not liable for any data breaches or anything that happens, All right. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe to the channel and all that jazz. And I will see you guys in the next video.